for all of us to hear Rex. Rex is super important in my life personally. He taught and baptized my wife when she was in his youth group in Dayton, Ohio. Barb used to babysit his kids as they were pretty young at the time, and we just had a close relationship ever since. And I just really appreciate Rex. And so I wrote to some people about what are some comments, what are some things that you would say about Rex? What has he meant to you? And I've got several pages. I'm not going to read all of them. I'm just going to read a couple, and then Rex, I'll give you the paper to look over later. But I think these comments are pretty common for people who have been able to learn at Rex's feet and being influenced by his example and his teaching. And here's the kind of comments that people have said about what Rex means to them. Rex took flannel graph Jesus and brought him to four-dimensional life for me. Year after year, Rex came to our hometown and spoke at youth rallies and other events that I attended, and I was in awe of the way that he brought God's Word to life. He inspired me to want to do that for other people, and so I went to AIM, and my life was changed. I made lifelong friendships and deep connections that I never would have made if Rex hadn't been part of my childhood. Rex helped me want to live like Jesus, gave me permission to be imperfect. Rex is my spiritual hero. I grew up in the church, but the first time I truly understood the gospel was after learning the Mark study. One man describes Rex as crucial and compelling teacher and gracious practitioner of the life of the real Jesus. Rex Boyles made Jesus come alive. And these comments go on and on. I mean, like that. I don't know of anyone that I would consider a better teacher than Rex, personally. He has influenced my life personally and spiritually. And I am so thankful for just the example and the influence he's had in my family's life. But I know that's been multiplied so many times over in so many other lives that he's influenced as well. And so I'm excited. I know that Rex made some of the biggest and most significant changes in the program over the years. And I kind of wanted to hear about that just a little bit. So I'm excited for us this morning to get to hear from Rex as what it was like when he was director. So let's give Rex a hand, please.
There was a request. I would not do this otherwise. If you know me, you know I wouldn't do this otherwise. But through the social network, apparently, there have been several requests have come in from Aimers, ex-Aimers, long-time ex-Aimers, that we sing, "Run if you're going to, run if you will." All right? I begged them, please turn off the microphone. They said no. I said, turn off the camera. They said no. So here's what we're going to do. This is a disclaimer, okay? I'm doing this under protest, all right? But a lot of you don't know the song. Those of you who do, you're going to have to help me. But those of you who don't know it, we're going to learn it just like we used to learn it at youth rallies all over the Brotherhood. Put the heels of your head together just like that. Just get a rhythm going. All right, now I'll just sing it. And those of you who know it, jump right in. Run if you're going to, run if you will, but I came here to stay. When I fall down, well, I got to get up because I didn't start out this way. It's a battlefield, brother, not a recreation room. It's a fight and not a game. Run if you're going to, run if you will, but I came here to stay. Now, the boys wouldn't bow, so the king got mad, said, turn that furnace up high. Bind them up and throw them in. Those Hebrew boys are going to fry. But if you'd been around just a little bit later, you might have heard Shadrach say, Pull up a chair, boys, and warm your hands, because I came here to stay. Run if you're going to, run if you will, but I came here to stay. When I fall down, well, I got to get up, because I didn't start out this way. It's a battlefield, brother, not a recreation room. It's fighting, not a game. Run if you're going to, run if you will, but I came here to stay. Now, that phrase, it's a battlefield, brother, not a recreation room. Okay? You don't really even have to be able to say it. Nobody understands it anyway, right? I can't remember how David started. Somebody start me with David. I went blank. Keep going. It'll come to me, guys. I'm so glad to be here, okay? Let's talk. All right? Let's talk. I'm gonna do what Chris asked me to do. There you go. That's a good secretary. It starts off with, doesn't Goliath? How doesn't it? Oh, forget it. Let's just talk. I told you I didn't want to sing. And I apologize to anybody who wanted that song, and eventually it'll come to me, probably right in the middle of Jay's presentation. And then we'll just interrupt him and do it. That's what we'll do. I'd like to see who's here, okay, first. If you were in AIM with Nat and with Don Solomon during that era, would you please stand up? I'd like to see you. Please stand up. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to stand up in that area. We honor and thank God for you. I said it to Nat, and I've said it before publicly, and I just said it to him privately, and I think I've said it at other times. Sure hope I have, because if I haven't, Nat, I apologize, because I've thought it a long time. Thank you, and we thank God for you. Because without you, we would not have been able to do what God brought us here to do. You built a foundation that allowed us to stand in a secure place to build, and I hope we built to God's glory and to the healing and helping of men everywhere. I'd like to see those who came to AIM after I left, who didn't have me as a director, and didn't have me as a teacher. If you came afterwards, the biggest number should be that. Would you please stand? And stay up, please. Please stay up. To you, I want you to know, we thank God for you continuing to do the work that God started before, and may it never end with you. God bless you. And now publicly, and I hope and if I haven't said it privately again, I apologize to Chris and to Pat and to so many others who are involved in this work. Thank you for what you do. Now, I would love to see those who were fashioned by fire, who went through the years when I was the AIM director and one of the AIM teachers. Would you please stand? Stay up. Because while you're standing, I want to say this and try and catch my breath. Thank you. If you had not been willing to do what so many others wouldn't do, I would not have been witness to some of the most amazing work God has ever done. I thank you for that, and I thank God for you for that. But I also want to say, to you especially, that applies to many more, but especially to you. I apologize for the shame I brought on us. But for anything I ever did to hurt you, for anything I ever did that in way distracted you or damaged you or upset you, please forgive me. I love you. I love every one of you. Even if I can't remember your names. Because I'm getting old. But thank you. I love you very much. Have a seat. Let's go to work. You're going to hear recurring themes in this from what Nat said and from what Don Solomon said. It will not surprise me if you hear some of the same things from Jay in just a few minutes. Let me take you back pre-AIM days for me. Beginning of AIM was 1973. In 1973, I was, for what I understood, the youngest Sunset School of Preaching student ever accepted. I was just over 20 years old, wise beyond my years, of course, and married, already wanting to begin a family. My first day of class, chapel used to be in what's the AIM classroom. I was sitting at the front. I got there early. I know nothing about, had never heard of the Sunset School of Preaching, had never heard of Abe Lincoln. Well, I heard of Abe Lincoln because there was a president by that name. But I'd never heard of Tex Williams. I'd never heard of Gerald Payton. I had no idea who Clyde Payton was or Ed Wharton. I just heard that there was a school where you could come and study the Bible. That's all I was interested in, folks. I was in college. I had finished 2 years of college, and somebody said, you know, Rex, if you went to this school, they'd teach you the Bible for 2 years, and you could be teaching people about Jesus within 2 years. And I thought, well, that sounds like a deal to me. I planned on coming here, getting this settled, and going back to teaching school or doing something like that. I'm still waiting to do that. But, I mean, I thought that's what this place... I sat right up on the front row ready to go. An older, very distinguished-looking man, hair not nearly as gray back then as it became, walked up to me on the front row and stuck out his hand. I stood up out of respect, like my mama had taught me. I shook his hand, and he said, my name's Clyde Payton. What's yours? And I said, it's Rex Boyles. He said, and this is not apocrypha, this is truth. He said, you spell that W-R-E-C-K-S? I was so excited I went, yes, sir. I have notes, cherished notes, stuck in a box where I keep those kind of things, in his hand, where he wrote me memos and memos for years. W-R-E-C-K-S. He always claimed he was the most important Rex. His middle name was Rex. So he used to love to tell people I was named after him. About 40 years after him is the way he used to say it. That was I knew nothing about the AIM program. Somebody may have said it, but I didn't hear it. I knew nothing about it. Went through 2 years of school here, didn't know anything about it. If I knew anything about it, don't remember it. Got my first youth ministry job, working at a place not far from here. It's where I'd gone to church all the time I was in school here. To get my support, I had to lead sing. Can you imagine what that was like? I had to lead singing at this little church, a Main Street church in Olton. And I thank God for them. They made it possible for me to be here, among others. But 1975, I got a group of high school kids from Olton He's 76. Got a group of high school kids from Olton, and we went to Ireland on a campaign with Jim McGuigan and Nat Cooper. While we're in that campaign, we went down to Dublin, and we got to see and meet and spend some time with the original AIM students. My first exposure, really, to AIM. It's the first time I remember having any recollection of what AIM was. Well, I moved off from Olton. We went to Ohio, did our work there, came back here finally to Sunset to work as the youth minister here. Of course, I knew something about AIM then, but I was involved in my ministry here trying to help young people become disciples. You'll hear more about that in a minute. That's all I cared about. All I wanted to do was to help young people learn to follow Jesus and do whatever I could to help that. Well, Don Solomon retired and resigned and moved on. So one of the people that Klein was interviewing, and I don't know that he would want to admit it today, but Jeff wouldn't want to admit it, but Jeff Walling was invited by Klein to come and speak in chapel. We're in this room. And Jeff speaks. That's the first time I'd ever heard Jeff Walling speak. I was so impressed at his skill, so impressed with his ability to communicate. As soon as chapel was over, I went to Klein's office and I said, Klein, listen, this guy needs to be the youth minister here. That was my cherished work was youth minister. This guy was so much better, so much more talented, so much incredible gifts from God this guy had. And I wanted the young people there. And I said, as an aside, I said, listen, hire Jeff as the youth minister and I'll take over AIM. And you're hearing that right. It was not me wanting the opportunity. There was, no. The youth ministry was the jewel in my crown. I wanted them to have the right kind of youth minister. I wanted them to have the very best, and I thought Jeff would be the guy, and I'd do the same thing, whatever it was. That's all I said. I promise. I didn't fill out an application. I didn't pray. I had no interest in AIM. None. I just wanted the kids to have a good youth minister. Well, it wasn't that many weeks because Klein didn't procrastinate a lot. He came into my office, and it was unusual for him to show up in my office. I got summoned to his several times, but never got... He came into my office and he said, Rex, I think I may have got you in trouble. I said, trouble? What? He said, I told the elders last night that you were going to be my new AIM director. For the next week, it was some kind of storm. I had visits from elders, deacons, elders' wives, and some people I still don't know. And they said, you're not leaving the youth ministry, and Klein wasn't going to let go of the AIM thing. So in 1983, I was the youth minister for the Sunset Church of Christ and the AIM director. Now and again, you see me twitch, you know why, all right? I don't know how long it went, but I was, at that point, trying to be the youth minister, but also I was trying to recruit a class, send a class, while you recruit a class to raise support for a class, to send a class. So Don and Joanne had it right. That was a nightmare. Finally, somebody, and I don't know who it was, finally took pity on me. And they just shot the youth minister in me and let me just become the AIM director. Now, it was during that time I worked with some, and you can look at these things for dates. I got no dates at all. I worked with some guys like Jim Stamatis, Bill Bunting, good men that were brought in here to help me, because by that time, Nat and the Solomons had built a program that was ready to grow. And so those men came to help me, and it was in a meeting with Bill Bunting. He said, Rex, we could do a much better job with these kids, and we could get more kids if we could just do one a year. So Bill and I went to Klein and said, listen, we'd like to do this. And of course, we got grilled. We got questioned. Oh, it's going to cut down our numbers. I said, no. I said, don't think that'll happen. In fact, Klein, I think you'll see more people come. And sure enough, he agreed, and in 1985, the first once-a-year AIM class started. There were, I think, 23 in y'all's class. And before I left, I remember us having a class of over 90. It worked. Thank God for Bill Bunning's wisdom. Well, I told you, and I can't go way far back. You don't need that or want that, but I didn't think in terms of recruiting. I didn't think in terms of trying to talk people into things. What I wanted to do is keep saying what I believed Jesus was saying. Follow me. Follow me. Let's follow Jesus. Let's become disciples of Jesus. I'd seen it, and this is a silly word to say when you're talking about God's Word, but I saw it work. I saw it work in a little church in Olton, Texas. I saw it work in a church in Dayton, Ohio. If you stand before kids or work with kids or love kids and you teach them of what it means to follow Jesus, to become a disciple, they will make that choice and then do whatever He asked them to do. So I began in AIM early on saying what we've heard Jesus say, and if you've known me long, you've heard me say it. If you continue in my word, then truly you are my disciple. So if I want to be a disciple of Jesus myself, if you want to be a disciple of Jesus, you must be devoted to His word. And a new commandment I give you, that you love one another even as I have loved you, and by this shall all men know that you are my disciple. You want to be a disciple of Jesus? You want to be a disciple of Jesus? You want others to be a disciple of Jesus? Then you must love the body. Love one another. And herein is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so shall you be my disciples. I was convinced, if I'm going to be a disciple of Jesus, if you're going to be a disciple of Jesus, we must have some kind of influence in rescuing lost people. That's the mission. That was the mission statement for the AIM program, even though the word mission statement had not been written yet. It was our mission to call young people to be disciples. First by being disciples, and then by encouraging them to be devoted to His word, to love the body, and to save the lost. Now, with that in mind, we began to make some adjustments. Because we could focus on one class a year, thank you, Bill Bunny. We could focus on one class a year. We began to order the teaching program and the practical side of AIM, the work program. We began to organize it according to that mission statement. Word, body, lost became a code for me that if it didn't fit there, if it didn't focus somebody on Jesus, if it didn't focus somebody on obedience to His word, if it didn't focus somebody on surrendering to His will, then we didn't want to get involved in it. And if it didn't help strengthen the love and affection between brothers in the classroom and in the fellowship, then we wanted nothing to do with it. And if it didn't in some way have some salt of the earth or light of the world on the lost, then we wanted nothing to do with it. And what it did is it simplified my life. It simplified the direction of AIM. You don't have to worry about a bunch of things if you can focus on one thing. And that one thing was, let's be disciples of Jesus. That's when we began to make some changes to the curriculum. And I don't know what was done before, okay? So what I say right now has nothing to do with what went before or what came after, okay? Because I don't know what went before and I don't know what went after. I just know what we did. We focused on, I wanted to make sure these guys knew Jesus. Now, I knew from my growing up that I had not been taught a lot about Jesus. I'd heard His name. I knew that. but I had not learned a lot about Jesus. And I went to college, a Christian college, and they taught me a class about Jesus. They called it the Synoptic Gospels. Still don't know what that means, but I learned about Jesus and fell in love with Jesus. And so it dawned on me, all I have to do, if we can just read the Bible, if we can just study about Jesus, people are going to fall in love with Jesus. And if you fall in love with Jesus, they'll do whatever he asks, right? Well, so we got started. But I didn't like the synoptic gospel part. The reason is I could never figure out where he did what he did. Serious, it was my weakness. I couldn't tell the difference between Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I couldn't. Where is that? I wanted to show it to somebody. I couldn't find it. Sometimes they repeat, sometimes they don't. So here's what I did. I just said, let's pick one. Let's just pick one gospel and learn it like the back of our hand. Let's learn it from chapter 1 to chapter, there you go, chapter 24. Let's learn about Jesus. In fact, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to read it every week. That's what we're going to do. And then, you know what we're going to do? We're going to memorize things out of it. You're going to be able to, before you get out of this class, you're going to be able to tell me every major event and some of the minor ones in the Gospel of Luke and what chapter. Like, for instance, it might be a good idea sometime to know, are you ready? To know where Jesus met Zacchaeus. Chapter, and it can't be a teacher, 19. Oh, there you go. Good for you. 19. And it might be a good idea. You might want to use it sometime when you're trying to share with somebody that you're trying to bring back into the kingdom. You might want to tell them that story about that prodigal son. 15. There you go. And maybe, just maybe, wouldn't you, if you were trying to introduce somebody to Jesus, wouldn't you want to read about when he begged God to forgive him, even though he was dying at their hand? $23. That's right. I wanted them to know Jesus that much. I wanted that, and so we just emphasized it. But we didn't just emphasize knowing it. We didn't just memorize it. What we did was we tried to put it in practice. Now, the success or failure of this is not the point. It was our intent, and that's what I'm trying to show you. Our intent was, if we studied it in class that week, we tried to do it for the rest of the week. Okay? Now, there's some disclaimers there. For instance, when Jesus raises somebody from the dead, you do not go out to the graveyard and start yelling at dead people. We had some of those, and they became aim assistants. Right. That's wrong. That's wrong. But so fun, so wrong, but so fun. And when Jesus walks on the water, no. We don't try that, okay? We don't try that. But if Jesus showed compassion for a widow lady, why not that week you find some older woman and show her compassion? Somehow. You can't raise her son back to life, but you could do something nice for her, couldn't you? You could show compassion for her, couldn't you? And if when you read about Jesus and Zacchaeus, I doubt if there's many people hanging out in trees around here, but couldn't you find somebody that nobody else likes? Somebody sitting off by themselves, or somebody that's doesn't look like they'd really fit in. And why don't you spend some time with them? That was our emphasis. I got to tell you, and again, there's no data on the thing to prove it, but I watched that exercise change some kids like I'd never seen before. I still believe, for those of you who still aim, whether it's you're about to start your field or not, reading about Jesus and then trying to obey Him, to imitate Him, is a worthy call. Well, that was one of the things we did. One of the things we did was we started this class, and I don't guess we had it before. Again, I don't know before, I don't know after. We started a class on how to study the Bible. But it wasn't so much how to study the Bible, because honest, I never liked any course that I ever had. Who taught me that? It wasn't Cheryl, so I'm good. Okay, it wasn't that either, so I'm safe. Is this recorded? Sorry. I don't remember who taught it, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it. One day in this room, we had a we had a big Wednesday night class. I love your singing. I wish you could heard theirs. That was an amazing group, man. College students from all over town and some folks that slipped in unawares. We'd sing in here and then we'd have Bible class. Elaine Kimbrough, now Elaine Pruitt, was in college at the time. She came up to me after class. I'm standing up there around that podium and she says, Rex, you tell us every week to read our Bibles. Every week you tell us. Read your Bible, read your Bible, read your Bible. I said, I do. I read my Bible every day, and I don't ever get anything out of it. What do you have to do to get something out of it? Bells and whistles started banging in my brain, and I thought, that's it. We've been having people order us to read it. You study your Bible. And we've had people quote scripture, study to show yourself to prove unto God. Like that was going to help us? So what I did, I started thinking, okay, what do you do? So I went back through some things I'd learned in that class that I didn't like and learned some things from my own experience, and I thought, I put that together. Our How to Study the Bible thing was started back then so that folks could learn how to study the Bible, how to read it, and hear what God had to say to them out of it. There's a bunch of stuff we could talk about there, bunch of stuff. We just tried to focus on His Word. But not just memorizing scriptures, not just having the right position on church house issues. We tried to make it, let's be like Jesus. Now, you heard it a second, and I got to tell you, the longest running aim assistant in the place, I'm going to introduce the assistants in a minute that I knew and had, but the oldest one, the longest running one was my daughter Sherry. She worked in AIM as long as I did. She didn't have a choice. She was here at every banquet, every special thing, and during recruiting and fundraising, guess who got to go along with Daddy? All right, I drug her all over the place. But she's the one that got me started on this idea of Luke. Teaching the kids about Luke. It's Easter time. All those shows, they used... Now, you understand, this was back before Dish and DirecTV. This is back before the internet. You had to crank the TV to get the light to come on, okay? That's about how old this was. We did have color TV, but there was no such thing as a VCR, and you're going, what's a VCR? We had no such thing as a DVD player. We had no Blu-ray. Blu-ray was... we didn't even know anybody named Blu-ray. I didn't know. Anyway, it's Easter at our house, and big brother's got to go to school the next day, so he doesn't get to stay up. Sunday, Easter, they're going to show the few shows they had back then on Jesus, and you've seen all kinds of realistic type drama now. Not back in those days. It was flannel graph as you could get it, man. And Sherry and I are sitting, we popped the popcorn, little big brother still trying to get back in that bed, David. And we sat down in the floor with the popcorn, and the movie starts coming on. And I think it was the greatest story ever told. And here comes this crowd of people, and they're walking around these mountains. And here comes Jesus, and he comes up, and the camera focuses in on him. And Sherry turns around, her head whips around, she looks at me and says, is that Jesus? Well, I said, no, baby, that's not Jesus. That's just the man that's playing Jesus. I cannot describe the face. She lost all interest. It just went, brrrt. She said, oh, I wanted to see the real Jesus. I wrote it in my Bible, my real Bible. I wrote it in my Bible, and I've written it in every Bible I've ever used since, and I've taught it for 30-something years. How old are you? And that's what I thought. I've taught it for years, since she was 4 years old. 4 years old. Because I wanted to see the real Jesus in me. And I want to see the real Jesus in my family. And I wanted to see the real Jesus in these students that were claiming they wanted to follow Jesus. That's how all that got started. Now, how about loving the body? that did order some things. That just gave us opportunity to do some things. One of the things we started as a result of that, is the Wednesday brown bag, pray for ex-Amers. I don't know if you know, and I'm sure, because I know we keep our covenants here, but I don't know what emphasis it's given. But when I was a student back in the school, right after Pentecost, when we had the school, we made a covenant with all of our ex-students. And on Monday morning, every Monday morning in chapel, there was a special announcement, special prayer, sometimes an entire chapel devoted to thanking God and praying for the exes of the school. There was nothing of that I knew about. I didn't know before and I don't know after, but I didn't know we needed to do that for our ex-Amers. So we started having a Wednesday brown bag where we would remember past Amers, and then we would pray for the Amers on the field, and then we would send letters to young people that we thought might be Amers in the future. And Wednesday brown bag became that day that we made that promise. But it was the intent, the idea came from this idea of disciples love each other. And so we tried some of that. One of the other things we did about that time is we tried to stop church being a spectator sport. I mean, you've done it. And I've seen some of you, okay? So don't lie. I've seen some of us go to church and sit and listen and kind of give it kind of like the Olympics, figure skating. When the preacher gets finished, we ought to have signs. 7.6. 9.2. 3.5. Way too long, But we've approached church that way, haven't we? We approached church that way. I kept trying to say, and I was trying to learn it too, so I was trying to get these guys to think it. Sunday is not about a day off. It's not a rest day. It's not the Sabbath. No, Sunday's a work day. And that means when you're in that assembly, you don't clump and 3 or 4 Amers around. Y'all just sit there, how you doing? How you doing? No. You get that time later. You're supposed to divide and conquer, folks. There's people in that room that need to be loved. There's people in that room that need to be served. What are those one another passages? Be kind to one another. Serve one another. Encourage one another. Those kind of passages that say love each other. So we said, hey, let's divide and conquer. Don't go to church and clump. What you do is you find some place I'm going to go sit down there. Now, I said, be careful, guys. Do not walk up to some little old lady and say, let me sit next to you and grab her purse. That's not good. She'll beat you to death with that purse. But let's start loving people. Now, did they all do it? No. Did I do it? No. I don't know that I always did it, but that was our intent. We wanted to, if we're going to be disciples, we want to love each other. Now, an extension of that at some point came to be when we got so many Amers and they weren't getting the kind of experiences in one place, we tried to spread it out. Now, with all due respect to anybody involved, and I don't know before and I don't know after, but the mindset of we need to keep everybody here, I'd love to discuss it if that's the case, because I'd love to argue with you. If you want these kids to learn to be disciples, if you want them to learn to love, you got to get them out of this place, this hothouse. You got to get them out there where folks don't know anything about AIM and they don't know anything about Sunset School or whatever. No, what you want them to do is be out there with real people. And it's not that not real people here, it's just hard to find them, right? Well, I used to be the preacher here, and that was another story that we won't go into, but I was the AIM director and preacher for about 3 years. Until I finally begged them, please get a real preacher, I need to do something else. But I walked up to a guy and shook his hand, had not seen him. And folks, I was not one of these guys that sat in my office. I was around, I visited people, I tried to learn names. I was working on trying to learn the entire church, all their names. And I walked to a guy I'd never seen in my life, introduced myself. He said, yeah, I know you. I've been a member here for 30 years. Whoop. So I said, what we decided to do was break them up into pieces and let's get out here. And so we asked some churches like the Sudan Church and the churches in Clovis and the churches in Snyder and the churches in Tulia, churches all over the place. We said, hey, let's break them up and let's start sending them out and let them work with those churches and help with those Bible classes and love their old ladies and encourage their preachers. You call it area churches, that's what we call it. Just spread out. Because what I believed it would do, not only would it prepare us for our mission, is it would show a brotherhood of people that we love you too. Whether you come here or not. Whether you support us or not. We love you. Our intent was to love one another even as Jesus loved us. Now, it seems funny, odd, that a program, Adventures in Missions, sometimes didn't have a lot of emphasis on sharing the gospel with people in order to save them. Don't know about before, don't know after. I'm just discussing what I found when I got here. I found that we were learning a lot of Bible, passing a lot of tests. Well, some of us were passing a lot of tests. That's another story. Another wise thing Bill Bunning used to say is you don't have to pass history to make history. I love that. But I did not see in us the ability to have a conversation with somebody and open the Bible and teach them. AIM students were geniuses at meeting people. You are very gifted that way. Incredible. Thank God for that gift. Don't stop ever using that gift. But as good as that is, opening the door, that is wonderful. But at some point, you've got to walk through the door. At some point, you've got to invite them to follow Jesus, right? Now, you may not be the one that does that, but there's somebody in your team, hopefully, that can do that or will do that. Or maybe your missionary will do that. But I noticed our guys, the first few groups, we were really lacking in that area. So what I decided we were going to try. And guys, again, listen to me. I'm not saying this is better than anything. I'm just saying it's all we had at the point. I used a Bible study that I had written out of the Gospel of Mark. I called it Good News Jesus Can. Jesus can save us. Jesus can care about it. Jesus can help us. Jesus can Jesus can help. That's good news to me. Comes out of the Gospel of Mark. And at the beginning of every school year, during orientation, after all of the orientation, we met either in the classroom downstairs or up here when the room wouldn't hold us. We would have 12 hours of instruction. Over 4 days, we'd go 3 hours a day at night. After all the other assignments were done, 3 hours a night for 4 nights. We had 12 hours of instruction where they learned to take their Bible and to show somebody Jesus out of the Gospel of Mark. With this thought, that if somebody falls in love with Jesus, they'll do whatever he asks. So we didn't spend a lot of time on how do you answer this question and how do you win that argument. No. We just emphasized, just start talking about Jesus. Just have a conversation about Jesus. We just had a group of the Aimers over at our place. Grateful for the opportunity to share it with them. And we kept saying it over and over again. Just start the conversation. Just start talking about Jesus. And watch what happens when people fall in love with Jesus. But we made it mandatory, folks. We grill it. Not only did we do it the first week, they had to practice it throughout that time so that when they got to their, quote, mission term, and that's coming up, our mission term, they were able to teach that at home group Bible studies, small group Bible studies that they set up themselves. That's when all that started. Well, since we had one class a year, we decided, hey, let's do that. Let's have the last. Everybody gets to come to AIM. Everybody who wants to come to AIM gets to come. From the middle of August until January or till Christmas break, everybody gets to come to AIM. Unless you're just really whack job, and then we make you an assistant. And then I'm not going to do that again. Maybe, but it's just too fun. It's too fun. But we said everybody gets to stay, but they're honest, and it's the truth. There are some people that are not ready to go onto the mission field. Or maybe they choose they don't want to go to the mission field. I used to talk to folks all the time about, come to AIM, come down, learn the Bible. If nothing else, then go back to school, go back home, whatever you want to do. But come and study and learn to be a disciple of Jesus, devoted to the Word, loving the church, saving the lost, and then do whatever. But then while they're here, they get excited, they get invited by a missionary to come to a field. We'd form those teams and all those things. I did hear from somebody the other day, some of the same phrases we used, pick a dream team or a nightmare team. You can go into hell with the right kind of team, or you can go to heaven with the wrong kind of team and make it seem like, right? We talked about that. But anyway, in that mission term, from January to whenever we kicked them out, sometime in April, we focused on their mission training. And we focused on doing the kinds of things they would be doing. So much time devoted in the Word. So much time devoted to the church. So much time devoted to the lost. And we tried to develop some kind of schedule that wouldn't necessarily fit on the mission field, but it would teach them to think that way and to break up their schedule that way and to find their particular place and what they did best. And so we broke them up and sent them to area churches. And during that mission term, they got to practice these in home Bible. So we started having campaigns out at Tech. We'd rent a room out there and send AIM students out all week, invite them to come. And for 4 or 5 nights, we'd teach. There are people today. There are people today that are going to heaven because some of our guys were out there doing what Jesus wanted them to do. And they're not here, but I tell you what, in heaven, in glory, they're going to find you and thank God that somebody invited them to learn about Jesus so they could fall in love with Jesus so they could obey Him. Now, that's how a lot of those changes came to be. That's also when we introduced the trip to Mexico City. I'll say more about it in a minute, but there was a team. Jay Jarbo was on that team. There was a team that was being formed to do a work in Mexico City. We saw the opportunity to take our AIM students down there because I wanted them to have the same experience I had when I'd gone to Ireland and when I'd gone to India. And I'd gone to some places where the gospel is not, not a church on every corner. And I remember the effect it had on me, and I thought, man, look what it's going to do for these. And sure enough, we loaded, back in those days though, there wasn't airlines, there wasn't air-conditioned buses. We took the slow-moving train. Drove a bus. How many times did Bob Rennie make that drive? God bless Bob. Drive down, drop us off at the border. We'd load up on the train, and we would chug-a-lug all the way down to Mexico City. Stay there for a week, get sick, and then make our way back. But we came back changed. And I cannot tell you how many people tell the story of standing at the top of that Bank of America Tower of Americas, and looking out and seeing the lost and being overwhelmed with that and thinking, man, we've got to do something about that. We've got to do something about that. That's how some of those changes. There may be some other things you want to ask about. You ask, okay, whenever you get a chance. But honest, I think maybe the best, I can't say it's the best thing. It's one of the most effective things we chose to do. Was we chose to have people be a mentor to these apprentices. Jay Jarbo was a student in the school here. Bernard Krogsgaard was an ex-aimer who had just come back to school here. They were willing guinea pigs. When I sat them down in my office and said, listen, here's what I want. I need some guys that'll be assistants. What they'll do is you'll help the AIM students do the things that we're talking about. So when I hear Nat not having much help, and I hear Don and Joanne talk about not having much help, I understand, but I thank God that, God knew I couldn't do it without help. And Jay and Bernard were the very first, quote, AIM assistants. And that began a ripple with intent of folks coming off the mission field, coming back that want to help another team get ready. And then as they get ready, then they prepare themselves to go back to the field. And then another group, and another group, and another group. And as a result of their work, I think we began to see not only the numbers in AIM increase, we began to see the number of AIM teams multiply. And the influence of people that happened to this point. And it was a private conversation that Klein and I had. He said, I'll be honest with you, we used to have a bet. Neither one of us ever paid, but that's because he lost all the time and he wouldn't pay. It's just terrible. We'd bet. I'd tell him, I said, we'll have more AIM students in class on opening day than you'll have and it was just mano a mano kind of thing, and that you'll have in the school. Well, he'd come in and he'd say, okay, Rex, I've got 54. I said, you don't have 54, you got 22. He said, yeah, but they got wives and kids. I got to tell you, I love the day. I love the day when I counted it up, and I don't remember the numbers. But 90% of the student body of the Sunset School of Preaching at that time were ex-AIM students. And I thought, what an honor to God and to the work that you are doing. Look, that's the kind of momentum. And I think it was basically because we were trying to be disciples and these AIM assistants became incredible. Now, there's some AIM assistants here that worked with me. I'd like for you to stand. If you were an AIM assistant and helped me do all the stuff that we had to do, I want you to stand up because I want to point you out. All right? These are the folks you need to talk to. Jay is the first one, all right? In the next batch was Chad. All right? There's Teresa. You know Melissa? Oh, there's Heidi, Melissa, Tim, CJ. You need to talk to these folks. You need to find out what it was like in that time. No stories. All right? No stories. You need to find out what. Because it was their work, I think, that made the difference. I think it made the difference and allowed AIM to become what it was and hopefully will never stop being. All right? Now, thank you. I'm going to hush. But I got to tell you, there's not enough time to tell you what I saw take place in the lives of people. I'd really like for you to get to know Heidi. When I met Heidi, she had just graduated from Ohio Valley College. She had her associate's degree and had a job lined up. Instead of going to that job and having a normal life, she came to AIM. Went to England. While in England, her teammate left. And left her in England by herself. I remember that conversation. She said, what do you do? And I said, what do you want to do? I said, if you want to come home, we'll help. If you want to find another field, we'll help. She decided to stay. She stayed alone. That's not easy, guys. And she honored God in the work that she did there. And then when she got ready to come home, we invited her to come work with AIM. Not so much as an assistant, but as Miss Everything. She did everything. A part of what she did is she took a lot of heat. There were people that said unkind things about her because of me. This is a good woman. She lived her life devoted to Jesus, and she did some of the work that nobody else would do. And God has blessed her now with a healthy, loving husband and 2 beautiful girls. God bless Heidi. You got to talk to Teresa. Her name was Teresa Snow back then. Teresa Wilson now. AIM student, assistant, graduate of the school, missionary to Russia and to Mexico. Teresa was sitting right about where she is right now, way farther back. Way farther back. There's a fellow up front preaching about the mission that Jesus had called us all to. It wasn't recruiting. It was just preaching about Jesus and what Jesus wants us and expects of us. Teresa is on her left hand was her engagement ring. She was wise beyond her years and was already engaged at 18. At the invitation, she pulled off her engagement ring, handed it to her fiancé, and came forward. And she still aims. I can't keep track of this kind of stuff. I remember Melissa. I remember when I met Melissa. How old were you? Do you remember? Melissa was 14, and we became pen pals. And she'd write, and I'd write her back. Not as much as I should have, but she'd write. She was so faithful. Then she became an AIM student. And I loved it. She'd sit right up toward the front, and I'd love it because we'd start talking about Jesus, and she'd cry. She loved Jesus, and you could see it, the way she treated people. And then she went to the field and showed it there. Then she came back to be an assistant. And now she's mama to a bunch of these aimers. You need to meet these people. Those are the ones you need to get to know. I can't mention them all. But Tim Rush, guys, you don't know. Do you know? You have no idea what Tim Rush, and I'm going to say this right. If you misunderstand, come talk to me later. But you have no idea what Tim Rush could have been in a brotherhood that sometimes responds to personality more than principle. And Tim chose to be a disciple and is still doing that in the slums of Mexico. You need to get to know this guy. Chad Schrader. He grew up just about 10, 15 miles away from where I grew up. I didn't know much about his family. I knew the name, but I met him when he was at Abilene Christian, graduating with a pre-vet degree. We worked some out at White River Youth Camp. And Chad, rather than accepting and pursuing a lucrative career as a vet, became a disciple. And let that determine for him that he needed to go to AIM and come back as an assistant, finish the school, and go back to Mexico. And now he spends his days being a disciple, helping other folks become disciples. I got to shut up. I got to stop. But guys, there's a heart full of stories like that. What you do matters. What you do matters. And I know those of you who are ex-aimers, I know good and well you came off the field not thinking you did much, that you mattered much. I know that. I know too much about you. I know too many of you. But I said it before in all those years that you guys were with me, and everybody else needs to hear it too. Jesus taught it to me. Jesus didn't say we had to teach so many, preach so many, save so many. He just said to people just like us, it is enough to be like Jesus. You hear me? I don't know about rule books. I don't know about policies. I don't know about covenant agreements. I know nothing about that. I know nothing about that. I do know this. It is enough to be like Jesus. I don't know what else you'll do, where else you'll go, but it is enough to be like Jesus. And let me tell you now, if you come off the field and you're limping because of trouble, because of disappointment, because of criticism, because of hurts that are too deep to even understand or explain. There are people here that love you that would do anything in the world to help you. And so what I'm about to say is not saying anything about them. But I know there's one fella in this room right now that would do anything he could in the world to help you follow Jesus, even if it's with a limp. Because that's how he follows Jesus, with a limp. You get my name, get my number, get my email. You need a friend. You need somebody to fuss, cuss, and discuss with. You call me. You email me. You text me. Not Facebook me. Do not Facebook me. I don't have Facebook, but if I did, I'd deface you. Don't Facebook me. I don't know who else will stand with you, but I'll stand with you. I don't know who else will walk with you, but I'll walk with you. And we'll limp all the way home. Keep aiming.